separately.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Cool, man.
Yeah, so how are you finding the project so far? Maybe we can start with us now, because we haven't spoken to you yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can say like with the rhythm, I had
Mm-hmm.
to maybe listen to the song maybe for some time, maybe over and over,
Mm.
listen to it over and over again, because I know maybe it's like a style which is derived maybe from Indian music. So
Mm.
I didn't want to tamper with it in a bad way.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I was so sensitive with it. So I wanted also to really get into it. And then
Mm.
maybe after listening to it a couple of times, I, that was my interpretation. Yeah, of it.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And other than just the specific piece of music, what's your feeling about the project as a whole? Do you feel like it's making sense, or not yet so much?
I can say it's making sense. Like listening to the music, and also maybe I can say it's also a learning curve for me, because
Mm.
uh, for like maybe when I got like when I joined the piece of music, it was like it wasn't so clear, but when I listened to it maybe a couple of days ago, I saw maybe how it was taking shape. So I can say
Mm.
the music, here's the whole story of how everything will go. Like
Mm.
maybe the expression through music also shows maybe the spaces that we are going to give each other through the culture.
Mm. Mm. So, I mean, that comment about space is really so beautiful, because we were having a discussion earlier this week about that. And I mean, this whole process is new for all of us as well, like,
Okay, okay.
yeah, I mean, surely, like, when we worked on our first album, we had followed a similar process, but I think it was a lot more, how shall I say, self-conscious. It wasn't
Oh, okay.
as like, just like, it feels like we're diving into the deep end here, like we
Yeah.
because we're not also talking to each other about ideas. It's not as if I'm
Oh,
telling
okay, okay.
Shailesh how to play, or Drew's telling me
Yes,
how
yes,
to
yes,
play.
yes, yes. Yeah.
None of us are in the same space. We're just using our ears and seeing what
Okay,
happens.
okay.
So I mean, the intention of today's conversation is to really unpack the details
Okay.
of that particular piece, to also
Yeah.
see where we would like to take the project next, because
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we're going to do this a few times, and this being the first one, how could we improve? What could we, what could we do differently? Maybe how could we structure it differently? And then also
Yeah.
to reflect on what are the particular things that each of us were thinking about. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the instruments you used, and
Yes, yes, yes.
everyone could talk about that a little bit, talk about the approaches to the instruments. So even if they're fairly common
Yeah.
instruments, like mine, saxophone is very common kind of instrument, but there are a million different ways to play it. So
Yes, 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 yes.
so yeah, that's the point of today's conversation, and hopefully by the end of today we can collectively, between all four of us, come up with a, I don't know if you can hear those birds, man. Those are
Yes, I
hydie-das.
can.
Do you have hydie-das where you're at?
No, 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 no.
Purely South African.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, like, after this kind of conversation, we can also talk about like what's going on at the moment. I mean, I know um,
Hmm.
it's so difficult for us to collaborate over such far distances, like we're living in
Yes, yes.
different places,
Yeah.
but at the same time, maybe that's a beautiful thing. And how do we use that to make music,
Yes, yes.
so yeah, I mean, I think maybe let's start with the piece. And I know you've already started talking about like how the music um,
Yeah.
reflects the conversation. The music hears, the
Yeah.
project, and hears what's going on. And you had some really beautiful responses on things like rhythm and so forth. So maybe I'm
Yeah.
gonna go to the Band Lab screen and share
Okay, okay.
that.
Yeah.
Give me a second. Yeah, here it is over here. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe a good place to start would be, actually, before we do this, sorry, Shailesh and Dhruv, do you guys want to add anything or say anything before we get going and start taking this thing apart and talking about it in more detail?
I think, yeah, from my side also all good. I'm excited, especially to have another kind of rhythm in the discussion. I think it's very exciting for me. So some of the things already that you've said Othnell up to now, and I've got some thoughts already. So I'll park that until it's time, but I'm excited. Nothing further to add. Thanks.
Yeah.
So I wanna throw this out to you guys. We can do this in two ways. We can follow the same order of the people who contributed to this piece. So we'll start with Dhruv, we'll go to Othnell, or we'll go to Shailesh, we'll go to Othnell, and then we'll come to me. Or we can go in reverse, which might also be interesting. So I can start, and then we'll work our way backwards to the to Dhruv, who set out the initial idea. Which way do you think we should do it? I don't know.
I'm keen for the reverse.
It might be natural.
Yeah.
I'm actually keen for the reverse, and the reason for that is because I have no idea what each of you were thinking when you were contributing. But maybe if we reverse it, I can get a feel
like Chinese whispers.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean,
yeah, cool.
Mo, what's your thoughts?
I mean, I'm also keen for the reverse because it lets me get out of the way quickly, you know. But yeah, I don't mind either. Othnell, what's your feeling? Should we go forwards or backwards?
I think the reverse is okay.
Okay. So we
go, yeah.
Okay. No, but then I'm going to start again, and I just started this whole conversation.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So it's going to sound like a monologue. Let's start with you, Dhruv. Let's go with you.
Okay, cool. You listen to the whole track end to end, or?
Yeah, actually, let's start with that. Let's listen to the whole thing, start end to end, and then we'll jump into the pieces.
Yeah. Shall I go for it?
Yeah, man, jump right in. You can,
Cool.
yeah, go for it.
It sounds so different every time I hear it. I think it's from the time I put that piece in and sent it to you guys. It's so hard to get away from expectations of what it should sound like. And I left the space for you. You must fill the space, and that's all the thoughts that were going through in my head. Like I had a vision of what it should sound like at the end. And that's probably what was most different for me compared to if we were doing this together in a room, is there was no communication at all. So in a room, we typically, as much as one person might bring in a melody or a rhythm cycle or whatever into the room, there still is an element of collaboration, because I would bring in, the next person would add on, I give that person feedback, and there's a constant cycle of feedback. So there's typically still that one person that sort of guides the whole thing. But each person can bring their own voices. But what's so different about this was I didn't talk to any of you guys, and it was quite nerve-wracking, because every time I was hearing the next version, it got further and further away from what I imagined. But now that I'm hearing it now, I think it's been like, what, 2 weeks or something. It's sounding so beautiful, man. It's almost not my piece anymore, and that's really good. And that's what a true collaboration is at least what I'm starting to understand. I'm becoming a better listener than someone just speaking or having expectations. Yeah. It's always a difficult question when someone asks you where this came from, or where does this idea come from, because it's so complex. It comes from a billion different places. From past things that you've heard, or sounds that you hear on a daily basis, or what you were feeling at that time. Like it's a combination of so many things. So I tried not to be too practiced about it when I was recording that. So I didn't. I recorded it in one take and then just left it. Lots of mistakes. I can hear them now. So I tried not to re-record and perfect it and those kinds of things. There's a bit of an echo. Can you guys mute yourselves?
Othnell, could you mute? Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah. So this, when we recorded this 2 weeks ago, I was sitting in hospital for a couple of days. Nothing serious, but just doing tests for like 3 days. Wasn't traumatic as such. It was just uncomfortable with people poking stuff into you nonstop. But it was like people around me were really friendly, so it wasn't traumatic as such. But it was just sort of this melody that came to mind. It wasn't the melody as clearly as it is now. It was more just a scale or a set of notes that sort of were just constantly churning through my head for those 3 days. I don't know where it came from, why it came. It could have been anything. Could have been the beeping of the hospital machines or something that were beeping in some sort of a interesting melody. But yeah, so it ended up fitting into a scale of Indian classical music. So Shailesh, you and Mo, we've talked about this, but probably still a very difficult concept to understand. But Othnell, essentially a rag in Indian classical music is some sort of a scale. It's an ascending and descending set of notes, with certain notes being important more than others, certain oscillations on certain notes. It's got a character. It's like a person. You're describing a person with this type of eyes and this type of nose and the skin tone, and each rag is different. So this one particularly is called Rag Durga, and it's a pentatonic scale, just 5 notes in the ascending and descending. So quite easygoing, not a very complex structure. So I wasn't trying to trick anyone or do anything silly, but I think I might have anyway. It's the Durga is essentially a goddess in Indian mythology, I would call it, I guess. And essentially why people pray to this goddess is for her qualities of grace, and it's those feminine qualities that are typically stereotypical, of grace, love, care, those kinds of things that you would typically associate with the feminine energy. So it's not necessarily worshipping that goddess through this music as such. It's sort of just acknowledging those feminine energies that are all around us, in us and in other people, kind of thing. And that's the purpose of rags. It's almost like prayer, but not in the religious sense of the word. It's more of understanding energies around you and how they play and how you interact with those. So each rag is a different mood, a different scale, those kinds of things. So yeah, this one particularly was quite an easygoing one that was meant to bring out the mood of, or bring out that energy of grace. And yeah, like listening to it now, like everyone sort of played that part like really well. There was no one that was like going at this track like at a mad pace, or being very hectically rhythmic or overpowering about it. That grace just came through. And I don't know, maybe it's a lot of mythology or some science behind it, but it sort of just played out that way, and it sounds quite graceful. Yeah, I think that's probably one title for this track coming to mind, or something along those lines. So yeah, it was very interesting then listening to each iteration after that, and I really love what everyone did with it. Mangoma, on the stuff that you added, it was so amazing that you can play all these instruments and sing. Like I wish I could express myself in more than one musical instrument or one method of communication. It's not that I find the sitar restrictive. It's such a bloody complex instrument that there's so much of capability that it has. But sometimes I feel like it doesn't necessarily speak what I want it to. And I guess that will come with time. But I love that you can, depending on what you're feeling and what you want to say, you can pick up a different instrument or sing. Like singing is the ultimate expression, at least in Indian classical music. On top of the hierarchy is vocal music, because it has infinite amount of, I guess, range and possibilities, whereas an instrument is restricted to certain scales. So I loved what you brought to it, and there's so much going on in there. I think when we mix it, it will bring forth some things that are now hidden at the back, like the vocals and things. I'm like, I can imagine it's going to sound amazing when we mix it properly. So yeah, I mean, I tried not to overthink it, and it was just about like half an hour or something. I just sat in front of a computer and recorded it, and then left it to you guys.
And can I maybe ask, like, it's so beautiful describing like the where the piece comes from, and this idea of grace, and in a way, like, I mean, I don't want to say what I felt yet, but I'd be keen to hear what everyone's responses were initially to the emotive quality of the music when they heard it. And so maybe when we go forward to the other contributors, if they could speak to that, maybe they felt it in a completely different way. Maybe they felt some other emotion, or they were processing something else at the time, how perhaps they responded to that. But before we move from Dhruv, does anyone have any questions maybe for Dhruv in terms of what he's just said and what he's described in terms of his musical approach to this piece?
Yeah, maybe just from my side, Dhruv. I mean, so you initially said you had maybe some form of expectation, right? Which is kind of natural, I guess. But based on where the track has come to and where your initial expectation was, how does it feel? Because it seems like it's diverged quite a bit. And so where's your feeling? I mean, would you have liked something to be similar to your expectation, or has this expectation, because we know it's so different, been a different experience for you?
I wouldn't change it anyway. Well, besides fixing a couple of things that I see as mistakes on my side, but in terms of where the output is at the moment, I honestly wouldn't change it, because it's so much more organic. I don't think this would have been possible if we were in the same room. This piece would have been completely different. It would have been more mine, and it would have been more guided in towards that expectation. So the fact that we had no communication, the fact that no one asked me any questions through their process or whatever, like, I wouldn't change anything, because this piece is now owned by all four of us. It's all four of our voices in there quite equally. Like, there's no one on top of the other, kind of thing. Yeah, it's like four stories that came together into some sort of like a gathering around a fire, and we're telling stories to each other, kind of thing. It's 4 different stories, but one theme almost. Yeah, no, I wouldn't change it. Well, it sounds like a diplomatic response, but yeah, it's coming out beautifully. Quick.
Yeah, Dhruv, thanks for kicking us off there. Yeah, we'll move now to Mangoma. Would you like to take us through your approach? You know, what you were thinking about, how you responded to what Dhruv had put down, and also all these crazy tracks you did here, man. Like this, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4,
I sent it to
5,
Shailesh
6,
afterwards, all right?
7. Oh yeah, we're not actually going. Sorry, we're
Yeah.
supposed to go to Shailesh first. So hang on one second.
Sure.
Hang on.
Okay. I don't mind, but
Let's go straight to Mangoma and then come
yeah,
to
I
you.
don't mind. Let's go. It'll be cool.
Cool.
Yeah, I can say from my end, like I mentioned before, it was something totally different. So from listening to it, what came first was like vocals, but it was difficult to add vocals without something that would guide those vocals. So I thought maybe that section after the intro, where there was this melody, I thought maybe it was a sort of groovy and also ending. So I borrowed an element from the traditional rhythm from Zimbabwe, where we clap and sing and play drums. So it was like the rhythm is like also in that like in that format that maybe you clap and then it goes quiet, and then you clap and you. So it has dynamics. So I just thought maybe I could add that, but the vocals also were like something more Ndebele, more south of Zimbabwe, and then the rhythm was more like the rhythm that I was feeling was like the drum pattern wasn't really like following the traditional clapping. It was like following maybe something like West African. Yeah, so it was maybe a mix during that part. So that part was like the part which I said, okay, I will record this part first, and then I will go through the song playing Bira. So like when I was playing Bira, I also felt maybe there was this part where we were vamping, and then after the vamping there was that part where there's that melody. So I took that melody as it's the chorus, and then the part after the melody is the place where it goes down, and then there will be solos. So first I didn't know that you guys like maybe after Shailesh has played like after Dhruv have played that Mohammed is also coming to play saxophone as response to what Dhruv had played. So upon listening to the track after, I saw okay. It was also another added element. So I can go back to what Dhruv was saying, that it's difficult to predict where the song will go when the next contributor comes. So it's like maybe like what he says also, he said before, like it wasn't going to take the same shape if we're all in one room. So it's like maybe now it's that maybe element that we sometimes wish we can attain, like maybe when we say we want to listen to someone throughout the whole process. So maybe if we're in the same room, we can maybe have patience or tolerance for a short period, and then the person who's leading the way will always say, "Oh no, this idea is not okay. Maybe we should check that shape." But during the course of creating this piece, it's like I had to listen to what Dhruv was saying from beginning to end, and then what also Shailesh was saying from beginning to end, and then now it's also different when you edit your voice. Like when Mohammed edited his voice, it took a totally different direction to what I was thinking, and all of it becomes a learning process. Yeah.
Amazing, man. I was wondering if it would be possible, if you said you started with this this initial melody here, and sorry, I was trying to play it while you're speaking, but it was a bit too loud. I was wondering if you could maybe take us through that section, like one by one, you know, the different layers you added to it and what you were thinking, because it's so complex, you know. So I'm gonna solo the tabla and the sitar, and then you can just guide us through what you want to what we should solo and what you'd like to talk about in those layers.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can just you let me know where you want to start.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, from that part, it was like first it was Mbira playing. It was Mbira.
I'm gonna add it in now. Let's just listen to it with that.
Yes.
And I want to play it one more time without the others, just so we can hear what you're doing there.
Okay.
Sure, it's beautiful. It's beautiful texture.
Yeah.
So
I was like,
yeah, go for it.
I was like, okay. I was thinking maybe something which would respond to what Dhruv was playing. Something like because I was starting from a one, like from and then going and then scaling down up to three, and then closing with three. So also the rhythm, it was the one that influenced the drum pattern that I'll put after, because I was taking this style of from Burkina Faso, where you don't maybe strike on one, but you are like maybe responding, like creating a polyrhythm, like instead of so I wanted also to create a sort of syncopation with what Dhruv was playing.
Yeah, so it almost starts to become like a counterpoint in a sense, you know, like, I don't know how to explain it. I suppose syncopation is the right word, but it creates this like a dance between the two instruments, which is really beautiful.
And Mangoma, did you find your like inspiration for the rhythm from the tabla side or the sitar side? I'm interested in
I can say during this part it was the sitar.
Okay.
And then maybe after this part it was the tabla.
Okay.
So I can say maybe before from the intro up until this section, it was like I was taking it from the sitar, and then after the sitar, and then from the time when we begin to say, I was now listening to the tabla.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Do you want to take us through some of the others? You don't have to do all, obviously, but maybe just the most important ones.
And then there were clips. I think I put 3 clips.
Mm-hmm. Here they are.
Yeah.
Should we listen to all of them at the same time or one at a time?
I can listen. Maybe I can explain about them, and then we can play them.
Okay.
Or I don't know which one. Yeah. So it's like there's this rhythm. It's like those claves from South America, but like most people from Cuba are from Congo. So like from Congo, and also us from Zimbabwe are from that area. So most slaves that went to Cuba are from the southern part in the Central Africa. So there's this style from Zimbabwe which is like was given by UNESCO as the intangible heritage of Zimbabwe. It's called Mbende. So there's this clave which goes ta 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 ta. So that's the main clave. And then it stops again for some beats and then goes again ta 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 ta. So that's the first clap. So after that clap, and then I added the second one, which will be playing when we start like 1 10 1 and 1 2 3 4 1 E 2 E 3 E 4 E. So it will be playing on 1 E and 2 E 3 E 4 E, and then the third one will be playing on ender. So when we put everything together, to be like ta 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 ta. So, but to create that also the contrast, maybe the clapping, I clap differently. Like the first clap, maybe I use the palm being just flat, and then the second clap, I curve the palm going along, and then the third clap, I cut the palm going across. So it's like 3 different people clapping instead of just clapping it. Yeah, and then maybe if it was the same sound going through and through, it would be just like cut.
Sure.
So now, but it's like different also timbres, different velocities. Yeah.
Beautiful. I'm going to play them just for the sake of us hearing all those layers, and I'm going to play them layer at a time as you describe them.
Okay.
So this is the first one, which you said was the clave inspired.
Yes.
Clap. So that was the first one. Sometimes the network is not so good.
Yeah.
And this is the second added to that. And this is the third. So I think there's a bit of a delay on the line. I don't know why, but it kind of throws the rhythm a bit out. But maybe we can refer to it a bit later. So could you just recap for us? It was sort of like a clave, and then the second one was what would we call it?
Okay, I like the first one. We call the whole system of clapping. We call them makwa. Like the first clap will be like the one which is the main clave of the rhythm.
Okay.
And
Sure.
then the second one will be the second makwa, and the third one also will be the third makwa. So the first one, after the first clave, the second one will be playing 1E, like taki, 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 taki. And the third one will be playing like dimmy, dimmy, dimmy. Yeah. Like if I use the syllables take dimmy, so the other one will be taki, taki, taki. And the third one will be playing dimmy, dimmy, dimmy. But they all start together, like they start just a bar before the one, like pa pa ta 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 pa pa ta 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 pa, and then they stop again. And then when they come back, they start just a bar before the one.
Mangoma, where did you learn those syllables of rhythms?
From different people, like from school, from encounters with some different percussionists. Like there was a time where I went also to India. I was playing with some tabla players from India. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it's very familiar because Shailesh recites in that same syllables.
Okay.
Yeah, I was also wondering.
Yeah. Because I also have a tabla from India at my place. Like I bought some tablas there from Pune. I bought a tabla from Pune. Yeah.
Mangoma, I would be really keen to hear how you play some of the African rhythms on the tabla. I think that would actually be quite cool.
Yeah, I haven't been practicing a lot. Like maybe when I left, I just maybe did 2 or so lessons, and then I came back. But I think maybe I can try something out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean in terms of like how a tabla player would play it. I mean in terms of how you would play it, because it's a drum, and you're a percussionist.
Yeah.
So I would just be keen to see how you're not constrained by technique, where you apply your own technique and how that sound comes out through. That would be quite interesting for me, actually.
Yeah. I'll try something out, and maybe I'll send it to you.
Yeah, it's really so great to hear you talk about your approach to this, because it sounds like the fact that you've traveled all over the world is really evident, and also the fact that the heritages that you draw upon are so tied to so many parts of the world is so exciting to hear. Thinking about like Congo, and then people of Zimbabwe, and the links there, and clave systems that are married there, and the results are so beautiful. So thank you for sharing. Before we move to Shailesh, I just also keeping an eye on the time. We can talk for as long as I'm sure. For days, and I'm sure we're going to as well. But before we go to Shailesh, is there anything maybe that any questions or comments for Mangoma on his work and his contribution?
All good, thanks.
All good, man.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to really unpack here. And what I'm really curious about is like how you as a percussion player see your role, like in shaping the energy and the emotion of a piece of music. And you mentioned earlier that you had to listen to it many times and be quite sensitive. Yet at the same time, what you did add was, it was like, how do I describe it? It's like you added a lot of width, like a lot of instruments, but they all kind of woven into each other. So when I hear the music, I'm hearing like I'm not hearing a lot. I'm hearing one voice in a way, And so, how do you think about that as a percussion player? That would be my last question. Sorry, I have to both guide the conversation and ask questions, so I'm just going to take my liberties to ask questions.
I think for me, like my roots are like making music as many people, not maybe as a soloist. So for us, like if you are making music, you are also it's maybe as we grow up, that's when we start to specialize. But as young people, we'll be doing like maybe you should sing, you should dance, you should build instruments, you should maybe know the history about the instrument and also leave the instrument, maybe leave also the dance. So it's like maybe my approach to maybe if I have to bring a sound which is like from my roots, I also have to think of it as an ensemble, because it really makes sense when we play as an ensemble than when we play as a soloist. So maybe a soloist is like maybe it may sound thin sometimes, but like say maybe clapping, if I just clap maybe say the second clapping, just like ta-ta, 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 it won't have the same impact as when we are clapping maybe 3 claps or 4 claps or 5 claps. So the end result is like maybe shows the communal way of living, like you play your part and you respond. It's like maybe also a dialogue. So when also I in my music making, I carry the same energy, like the dialogue energy. So since I was maybe say I was introducing my heritage to you guys, I had to bring all those elements to the piece. Yeah.
Beautiful, thank you for
But
that.
I'm glad that maybe you say at the end it sounds like one thing and it's moving. So it means to me it's like okay. I never noticed that way. Yeah.
Beautiful, man. Thank you. Do you want to, before we go to Shailesh, do you want to talk about the other section of music? You said where the other melody came in. So I think it's here somewhere. And I think here it was specifically with Imbira in your response.
Yes. So on that part, it also took some time for me to understand where it was going. Yeah. So at the end, I figured out, okay, maybe this part is going to be a part of solos. And then I thought maybe if I play, like not maybe really like vamping, yeah, but my part was like I was vamping. But this style that we used, like maybe if we are playing in jazz or in other styles, which is different sections, but still using the same key, will be like when we are playing balafon or marimba or mbira, we can vamp around that section. And then I think maybe at the end it worked. Like when I was listening to what you added and also what Dhruv had also added before, and also I wanted to match the rhythm that was coming from the tabla. So there was this time, maybe I think maybe it was like I don't know if I'm okay. It's like something like I don't know if it's called a TIE or he was changing. I think maybe it was something like changing the what to say, like a meter change when it was going. So that part it was difficult for me to maintain the melody. So it was like shaking.
Sure.
Yeah. But I think maybe when everything is mixed, it will sound better, or maybe I don't know if I did it any justice.
I mean, maybe one of the things we can also talk about is like, and maybe between you and Shailesh, we can talk about the use of a metronome, and how useful a metronome might be for this kind of process. But Mangoma, thank you for sharing with us and for describing that. I mean, we only like really it's the tip of the iceberg, because in terms of this conversation, but I know we're going to have many more and begin to unpack it in much more detail. So yeah, let's go to Shailesh, and maybe we can also continue the conversation regarding some of the things you brought up already with rhythm and so forth.
Well, thanks, guys. Yeah, Mangoma, there's definitely, the tiha is actually something I wanted to chat about, and specifically, so we'll unpack that a little bit further. You know, when I listened to this track just now, when we just started off, I never imagined this before, but as I listened to it with you guys on the call, I imagined like, you know, a long walk, taking a long walk outdoors. There's a bit of rain, there's a bit of wind, and every now and then there's like an animal that comes up and it lifts the heartbeat a bit, and then the animal goes away and then we come back. And that's what I imagined. And I never ever pictured that, you know, when we started off the piece or when I listened to it over the last few weeks, but it just came to me as we were listening to it. And I was also inspired, you know, by what Dhruv mentioned about this being a female energized piece. You know, we often see, like in South Africa, we've got lots of gender-based violence issues. And I think it's really like a positive thing for us as four males to be embracing a female kind of energy, you know, within a piece. And not that that was our intention with the piece, but having some of that context and that emotion, or where the rag comes from, you know, it's very inspiring to me as well. So, you know, I think when I started, when Dhruv sent me or nominated me as the next person, my initial approach was to try and put myself in Dhruv's shoes and think about what is it that he wants out of this piece. And I struggled if I did that. So when I spent maybe the first day as I listened to it before I played, but just listening to put myself in that shoes, and it was actually impossible. And I had to then say, how am I going to find my own way? And then I came to the realization that this is all about my contribution to this track. And without having the context of what Dhruv has captured in his mind. Because generally, if you think about it, if we are all in the same room, in a rehearsal room or on the stage, we'll have like some form of brief, you know. Someone will say, this is what I'm feeling, the time is in 8, and maybe, you know, make it spaced out or fill the gaps, you know, there's all of that context, which we never actually had. So until I came to the realization that I have to push in what's mine and my contribution to this piece, it was actually quite a struggle. But once I let that barrier go, it felt quite natural to be able to contribute to the piece. And I think the feelings I had while doing this piece was very much like what we're seeing in COVID. You know, it's a little bit isolated, but at the same time, as humans in our nature, we find ways to adapt. We find ways to make it work. I mean, none of us has really used BandLab to this extent before this, and you know, yet we found a way, and the track sounds quite cool already. So I think it speaks to the human nature about creating and adapting in different spaces, and that's what I found challenging, inspiring, but also scary at the same time. Which really, if you think about it, sums up a lot of what we as humans are experiencing during COVID. You know, it's a bit of everything all the time. It's nothing at once. It just can be all over the place. What you spoke a lot about the challenge you had, Mangoma, in terms of the rhythm, and you know, I would say that I had the same challenge. So I wouldn't say it's because, and I think it's because of the space that we were put in, the space of the unknown of what Dhruv is thinking, the unknown of the time. I mean, you know, initially when I listened to it, I found a time of 7 within the first intro part, and then the time of 8 thereafter. And you know, I thought that may have been intentional by Dhruv, and I thought maybe not. You know, and that time of 7 and 8, which I found, is what inspired me to create a more spaced out section within the first part of the track. So, and what I found interesting is my approach was, within that first part, is to have space and to create the space. But what that meant is it actually created space for all of you guys. And especially your side, Mangoma, where I created the space, you filled in all that space with the claps, the imbira, the singing. It's where it's highlighted in terms of the visuals here. That specific section is where I've created space, and yet you found a way to add color and add layer to that from a rhythmic perspective, which I thought was actually very cool. And it wasn't something intentional, but yet we found a way to do it, you know. And I think in terms of space, Mo, I would like you to go to, I think it's probably around 1 minute and 50 seconds. And here, maybe just play the, yeah, I think you can play all of the mixes, it's fine. And effectively what we talk here through is, I'll talk you through the T-high that Mangoma was referring to.
Let me just turn it up a bit.
Sure, thanks. Thanks, Mo. Yeah, so I mean, the T-high, as you mentioned, Mangoma, so maybe just some color on T-high is like, it's basically a polyrhythmic phrase which ends in threes. And sometimes the intention there is to throw off the time cycle that we've built up, but only to come back to it. So, and if you listen to what has happened here, is that initially Dhruv had this full space. Actually.
It's 19 hours.
Dhruv had this space created there, and I used the space for this T-high. And what I found interesting is that while the time was off, and yet we reached the point, you find that Mohammed came in at an off time, only to reach the one again. So that was quite interesting because we had the T-high, which is there to throw you off, but then it was embraced by the saxophone to reach that one point as well. So Mangoma, maybe just to pose a question back to you here. Does that? I mean, you said you weren't sure if you did it justice in the track, but I think it sounded quite cool. Does that help give you color in terms of what was going on at that portion?
It was like maybe that portion, since I was vamping, so it was like a section where it was tense for me, but I think it all worked. Like listening to you now, I'm saying, okay, like I'm learning something that, okay, if the TI comes, it's like maybe throwing the rhythm out, and then if we manage to come back to the one, it's something which is beautiful.
And it is tense.
Also, yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay, cool, good. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of sums up my thought process. I don't know if there were
I'm just curious, like how many takes did you guys go through? I know Dhruv said it was one take, like from start to end.
So I split mine up. I did the portion where I first thought there was 7, so the intro side, and then more of a rhythmic pattern thereafter. So I split that up in 2. Yeah, there you can see it there. And I think the first one there was 1 take, but the second one, especially around the T-high portion, I had to do, I think, 3 takes there because that also threw me off. And if I listen to it now, it's not exactly on the one, but it's the scars of what we were doing anyway.
Yeah, Shailesh, you deal with TIs very uniquely. I've never heard of them being treated that way before. It's almost like TIs are typically at the end of something when you're going to something else, kind of thing. But you bring them in like almost randomly into the motion. which is definitely tense, especially for the melodic player.
I love it, man.
But it's cool.
I mean,
yeah, no, it's very cool. I've never heard of it being done this way.
I love it because for me, it's like, I mean, if you listen to what's going on here, I didn't do much there, but it was like, like it opens that space, that tension there, and then it's almost as if I like rhythmic players putting us on the spot, because like as a melody player, you can kind of fall asleep, because you're not doing much. Everyone else is doing the hard work, and you're just standing around.
Yeah, completely.
And so
I remember in
Drew? No, go ahead.
I was just recalling our other track on our album, Ideally Suited, where Shailesh does TIs in the 6 or 12 beat cycle. And I always, whenever you do that, I'm like, oh, okay, I must like start doing something better. Like, you're getting bored of what I'm doing, and so you start playing again. I'm playing a bit crap.
Yeah, and I think Mo on this one, like I said, I think the way you came in and the time that you came in was very interesting, because there's no right time on a TI, but it sounded right and it felt right. And like your gestures were, it came from far away, and then it just came in.
Yeah, that's really magical for me, man. And you know what I loved about this process is, like, one would think that because you're working on a desktop audio workstation, essentially that's what this is, that you would get very perfectionistic about it and precious about it, and like do a million takes and like kill the soul of the thing. But I love that there's mistakes in it, because it shows that we are learning, we're growing, and we're figuring something out. I always believe that if you don't make mistakes, what are you actually doing? So I love that kind of edginess to it, and I think it's a beautiful it's got a beautiful spirit, so to speak.
And Mo, on that point, I mean, at some point I tried to play with the metronome as well, and I found that the metronome was maybe taking away the spirit a little bit. And especially in the beginning of the track, where I was counting the 7, the metronome was creating a rhythm which I think was going to shape the track differently. And so it's almost like I had to move away from that. And it becomes difficult, because once you've added the metronome in there, and even if you take it out physically on the software, it's still in your mind. And so that becomes its challenge on its own, which I found quite interesting. And yet, when you start off, you think that the metronome is the place where you need to be, where you need to start off. But actually, it tames the spirit, if I can say that.
Yeah, I mean, the metronome's really in all of us, it's what's inside you, like, and then all those sounds come together metronomically in the end, in some way or another. So yeah, it's a very good point you're raising about that. And I'd be curious to see how we can explore other approaches, like, so for instance, all the tracks don't have to be live tracks. Like, some tracks can be guide tracks. Some tracks can be muted later. They don't have to form part of the final output. Like, so say if there was a guide rhythmic track, or a guide melody track, or whatever, but those tracks are not part of the, so for instance, at this time we did a call and response where we had someone do something and someone respond and so forth. But we could also do something where there's an initial kind of track that's a guide track for everyone, and everyone responds to that, and then we mute that initial track so that whatever's remaining is what the music becomes, something to that effect. Could be another way of exploring, and we can talk about that as another option as well.
Yeah, and I mean, just one more thing from my side. I think what I also really liked about this, and you mentioned, is it's the realness of the track. So sometime long ago, there was a track where I was listening to this tabla player, and you could hear him coughing and clearing his throat in the recording, which it's so real. And what made me think about it now is when we were listening to the claps, or one of the sounds, there were kids playing in the background on your side, Mangoma. And I thought it was so cool, because that's the realness of where you are. It's not in a studio, it's not on a stage, it's in your home. And Mo, if the birds were singing behind you, then that's part of the track. I think it's quite cool. And so that's why I like the track, because I think it's a very real nature of what we have. It's not perfect. It's not studio like. It's actually personalities that have come together to create this track.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, before you jump into, just to reiterate what that Indian sounding lady was saying. So because she was saying it's 7 o'clock. So the call will continue forever, but the recording will probably stop in like another 10, 15 minutes, which is fine. I don't think we should be restricted by that.
Okay.
The recording's a bit restricted, unfortunately. But yeah, we can go past that. I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to take very long. Yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm not going to take very long. Like I was saying, I really was just kind of building. I'll just go through what I was doing piece by piece. And Dhruv, in a way, like when you were talking about this tune and like the rag being based on that particular kind of emotion, I really feel that, and I wonder sometimes if like the fact that rags are developed over like hundreds of thousands of years in a way gives them that quality, because I don't know if anyone else felt differently, but there was like a playful spirit to this piece of music, and I picked it up sometimes in the counter melodies that Mangoma brought in. So for instance, I'll go to the main section as well. And my job most of the time is just to listen and to highlight. I see myself as like a highlighter sometimes, Sometimes the saxophone leads, but it can be a highlighter, it can just outline particular details. So by the time I had received, because I responded last, there was already this in the track, this idea. So these two ideas really. So that was one of the voices that I heard was do 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 do, and I thought it was so interesting because once again, maybe it's coming from Mangoma's approach as an ensemble, as a one-man ensemble, of kind of completing what you're doing, Drew. So you go do and in a way, what he's doing is extending on that. And I thought that was amazing. So I kind of just picked up on that again and added some color to that with the saxophone here. And for me, that really started to kind of sing. And I think that's always what I'm aiming for, is, for music to sing. And that's like, for me, is the most successful part of this piece in a way, as a statement, as like an idea. And I'd really love to if we do come back to this at a later point, to figure out how we might use this segment or this nugget as a generator, maybe for an arrangement, because it's really so powerful. As an idea. And my like I said, my role, I really just try to use my voice, and my voice comes from a myriad of different influences, including, South African jazz and American traditional jazz, and a little bit of like the sounds that I hear playing with Kinsmen. Not that I understand anything about Indian classical music, but at the time when I came to do this, I was very interested, and I'm still very interested in this very particular way of South African way of playing the saxophone. So when we go to the second part, I try to pick up on some of those colors, and I'll work out the notes and tell you what they are. I don't have them here on me now, but there's a particular sound, and I'll. think there it comes out quite strong. It's kind of like a blues influenced sound, but it's I don't know what mode that is. I don't know if you know tonic solfa Mangoma, but there's something there that's that color. So I was trying to go for that color and also just color around the piece. And even though this part felt like it needed solos, it was strange because there was a lot going on here. So you can see in the track like there's space here, and then I kind of respond to that. But then there's also a lot happening after that. So I was using my eyes as well, trying to like see. But also after hearing it a few times, I kind of had an idea of where the spaces were, and so I could also close my eyes and just kind of figure it out. So when it comes to this T-high, yeah, I knew it was coming without needing to count it, you know. And I must say, like the imbira and the tabla and the sitar is the sound I've never heard something like that before. It's beautiful. It's got like a landscape kind of sound to it. It's very broad, expansive sound, and I really love that. And I didn't actually want to solo over that because I thought that it needed to also speak like a kind of like a lake, you know. It's got like a lake, the broad expansiveness of a lake or something. So yeah, I mean that's really my 2 cents. I don't have much more to add. Yeah.
Can I ask
I
you
did
something,
add. Yeah. Go for it, Dhruv.
You mentioned in the starting and last week something that I don't know if it was just within this track or in music in general, you see the saxophone as an instrument that just, or maybe not just, but should add color and texture. Is that just your approach to using the saxophone as an instrument? Because I see it so differently. It's such a bold, in-your-face instrument. You can't leave it in the background.
Yeah, I mean, I think it because it automatically takes that position. I think that's how I challenge it. You know, I'm like, how can I not be in the front of the band, but a part of the band? That's how I think about it, you know. But obviously, it is designed to be in front of the band, and so at times in the music, it goes there. But my position is always like, because I really want to be like one of you guys, you know. I hate being a saxophone player. Like it's so boring, you know. I have to wait all the time. You guys are playing, having fun. Like then I just can't play a melody. Then I got to go off stage, you know. Like I want to be part of the band, basically. So I try to use the instrument in those ways where I can.
Yeah, that's really unique. I'm not any sort of a connoisseur in jazz music, but like I haven't heard the saxophone being used in that way as the way you do. So it's interesting.
Yeah, so if there are no other questions, I don't know how we're doing for time on the recording, but I think this was a really useful session. And one of the things I was hoping, and we were all kind of hoping we would get out of this, is to start throwing around some ideas about what we could do next. I think that from my side, I'll just say, I think this is a useful process. And if we were to, even if we were just to do this several times and a different person starts each time, that's already going to result in 4 pieces of music, you know. And then we could go back to them and we could clean them up and we could, you know, work on them or so forth. So that's one suggestion. But I'll be keen to hear if you guys have any other ideas as to how the project could take form and what we could potentially do next.
This has really inspired me to do more of this. Initially, I was thinking we should maybe follow a different direction and talk more about the non-musical aspect of this project. But this conversation has really inspired me to do more of this. So 1 vote for that.
Yeah, I'm also keen for it. I think you know what's nice about this as well is that we're starting to learn about each other, so musically and non. So you know, my feel is that if we do this, you know, 4 times more, however many times more, and then at the end we know each other, and we know each other in terms of music and your approach, and a kind of get a little bit of your personality and how you think and what was your day like, then I think that's we've achieved a lot, you know, because if ever there's a time when we are together and we get to play live together, then I've already built up that relationship with you. I already know how you think and where you're mischievous in your music and where you're not. And you know, we can look to create something cool. So I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, from my side, I can say, from like most as musicians, when we play, what we play comes from our heart, and we give it to the people. So I can say from sharing, as the four of us sharing, so it's something from our heart. So I'm learning like something that you never fake, like you never fake a musical feeling that you have. So it's like a character that you have. Maybe you can fake reputation, but you can't fake character. So I can say it's a I'm not only learning about the musical side, but also I'm learning about the three of you guys. And then if there is need maybe to play together one day, there is already a place to start for. And there's already
absolutely.
understanding.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also keen. Like I said, I think this is a hugely beneficial process, and I thanks for all sending your CVs through yesterday. There is possibilities for us to play together, so we're definitely going to do that. But I'd also like us to think about the output of this work as valuable, you know. And so even if we put it on Bandcamp or you know, like we put it on SoundCloud, maybe this conversation goes on YouTube. Like I think all of those moments in the project are really, really important, and we can use that to already build something into the music. So yeah, and then are there any suggestions maybe on what we could, if we are going to follow this process, are there any suggestions on what we could do better next time? You know, what might be an easier workflow, any challenges that we maybe had or so and so forth?
Initially, I was going to advocate for us to use the metronome. But now I'm thinking completely differently after having this conversation, because it's allowed for that freedom. It was really difficult for me to record with the metronome. I'm not used to that at all. That was my only comment. It was metronome related. Besides that, everything worked out really well. Can't think of anything else to change.
Yeah, also I think it works well. I don't think anything to add really.
From my end, maybe I'm just keen and waiting to hear how the mix will go. Maybe yeah, and then maybe we'll know the whole process. But so far, I think I'm okay with what we've done.
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, in terms of mixing, we haven't really discussed it yet, but that's maybe something I'll bring up on my side. Like if you look at this particular track here, Shailesh, this is a very hot recording here. There's a lot of clipping here, you know. So maybe like just in terms of audio recording, to pay attention to that. The other stuff is okay. Like maybe Mangoma, I don't know, like your tracks for some reason have the original reference track in them. So I don't know if you could maybe use headphones when you record, because that would take that out as well and make the mixing process easier. But other than that, I don't see that there's going to be any real issues with mixing this. The only question really is whether we want to mix it or whether we want to revisit it and you know attend to certain things before we mix it. But I think we can decide that at a later stage. I don't think we need to rush into making any decision on that right now. Yeah, so are there any suggestions on who would like to go next? Are there any volunteers for who would like to start the next conversation?
I'd love for you to start rhythmically. That would be fascinating to me.
Mangoma, can I nominate you?
We can't hear you.
Yeah, it's okay.
Cool. All right. So we will correspond with you again over WhatsApp and set some dates up so that we can plan it, so that everyone has enough time and you have enough time to think about it and record it. And then we'll repeat the process and see what comes out on the other side. And maybe we'll have another call in a few weeks' time, just like this one, and talk about it again and record it and so forth.
About the headphones, I think also I have to look for them, because I think there's been that issue of the bleed also coming to the recordings, because I was using like earphones. If I'll look for proper headphones next time I'll do it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, let us know also if there's anything we can assist with in terms of that, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that brings us really to the end of today's dialogue conversation. I'm glad we got a way forward and we got to spend some time with each other. In wrapping up, I'd just like to say again, I'm really grateful to everyone for being part of the project. I'm really grateful for this project. I think it's creating a new space, and we're all here part of the process, and I can't speak on behalf of the work. Like Mangoma says, you know, the work speaks for itself and it speaks from the heart. So let's continue to do that and see what comes from the process. Are there any closing comments or final words from anyone?
Well, thanks for facilitating, man. I didn't think we'd need a facilitator as such. I thought it would just flow organically, but it really helps keep the structure.
Yeah, maybe as we proceed, it will become more natural.
Yeah, I think this was it was really valuable and inspiring. So I'm really looking forward to some of the other ones. I thought it's going to be really useful to have these conversations, but I don't think I expected so much to come out of it. And like you said, well, we spent 2 days on this call. We probably still keep on talking. I don't think we'll stop.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would like to say, from my side, I love the shape that the song took, and also even this conversation took. I can say maybe we'll see with the next project that since you have nominated me, I'll be inspired also to start it off. But I know I will have the same feeling that Dhruv had, that maybe what he was thinking wasn't the end result. Maybe it will be something also to learn from that. Yeah, like starting something and then seeing it going another direction. I think I'm waiting to get that feeling. Yeah.
Sure. Amazing.
What a nice feeling.
I suppose we're all going to feel it at some point. Yeah. Okay, thanks so much for all your time and for your effort and your energies. And I wish you all a great evening further and a good week ahead. And we will be in touch over WhatsApp again.
You too, Mo.
Thank you.
And also one last thing, sorry, if there are any, in terms of the project, if there's any questions at any moment, please drop them in the WhatsApp group. Sometimes the WhatsApp group is a little bit too quiet for my liking, because I worry like what's going on, is everyone okay? But that's just my nature. So if there's ever any questions or concerns, just hit us up in the WhatsApp group and we will respond as soon as possible. All right, have a beautiful night, guys. Thank you.
Cheers.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.